guys, hi everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a video on the story of the Burke and Hare murders. So, in contrast to the increase in numbers of executions in the wake of the Blood Codes, the Judgment of Death Act of 1823 saw the numbers of crimes punishable by death in Britain drop dramatically, which would have been good news for lots of people, but not for medical schools, as they were only allowed to use the bodies of those who had been condemned to death. This led to an extreme shortage of bodies available for the medical schools to use. However, some medical schools were able to find ways around this. They would hire grave robbers, known as resurrectionists, to go to graveyards and to dig up and bring freshly buried bodies to medical schools. This practice became so common that relatives of those who had recently died would watch over the graves of their loved ones so that their bodies weren't dug up and stolen. And watchtowers were built throughout Scotland to watch over the graveyards to make sure that none of the bodies were stolen out of graveyards. The fresher the body, the more money the robbers got, so it wasn't long before the grave robbers went from being grave robbers to murderers. The most famous of these stories in Scotland are the tale of Burke and Hare. The murders on this tale occurred from 1827 to 1828. William Burke and William Hare both came from Ulster in Northern Ireland and moved to Scotland to find work on the Union Canal. Burke abandoned his wife and 2 children in the process. The pair met and became close friends when Burke moved with his mistress, Helen McDougall, to lodgings in Tanner's Close in the West Port area of Edinburgh. Hare lived on the same street and was running a boarding house there with Margaret Laird, who was a widower. The 2 of them were known as husband and wife, and she was known as Margaret Hare, even though they weren't legally married. In December of 1827, when one of Hare's tenants died, who was an elderly army pensioner known as Old Donald, who died of natural causes, he owed Hare £4 worth of rent. To cover the man's debt, Burke and Hare went to the medical school at the University of Edinburgh and were told to give the body to Professor Robert Knox, and he paid them £7.10 for Donald's body. The 2 of them were encouraged by how easy it was to make this amount of money. They then decided to strike again in early 1828 1828, when another tenant named Joseph became ill. They were too impatient to see if Joseph would die from the illness, so the pair took it upon themselves to kill Joseph. They did this by getting him drunk and then restraining him and suffocating him by covering his mouth and nose. This became their favourite method of killing their victims, as it left the bodies unmarked and undamaged. In the aftermath of their killing spree, this practice became known as burking. When none of the other tenants fell ill, they went to Edinburgh's poorest areas, who were less likely to be noticed missing or their bodies recognised in the medical school. In total, Burke and Hare killed a total of 16 victims for a sum of either between £10 to £7. A local prostitute, Janet Brown, had been lucky enough to escape the murders of Burke and Hare. When she and her friend Mary Patterson were invited to stay by Burke, having left earlier that evening, Janet returned to find Mary had gone and was told Mary had gone out with Burke. Janet waited for her friend and eventually decided to leave, having no idea Mary was lying dead in the next room. Burke and Hare became greedy and no one was safe. An elderly grandmother was killed with an overdose, and Hare murdered her blind grandson by breaking his back across his knee. The pair even killed a member of Helen's family. This greed caused the two of them to become careless. A number of students started to recognise some of the victims, including Mary and two other prostitutes, and Elizabeth Holden and her daughter, who went to a lodging house to inquire about their missing mum. The students started to talk, especially when Burke and Hare brought the body of a disabled man who was a children's entertainer named James Wilson, who was well known as in Edinburgh as Daft Jamie. Knox strongly denied that this was who the body was of, and he cut off Jamie's head and deformed foot so that no one would be able to identify his body. On Halloween of 1828, Burke and Hare's last victim, Marjorie Campbell Docherty, was invited to stay with Burke and Helen, as she was a distant relative of Burke's mum. A couple named James and Anne Gray were invited to stay at Hare's lodging house so that Marjorie could be murdered. They were told that Marjorie was asked to leave as she was flirting with Burke. However, the couple became suspicious when they weren't allowed to enter the spare room where they had left their belongings. They snuck into the room when they were left alone and found Marjorie's body dead under the bed. The couple confronted Helen over it and she tried to bribe the couple £10 a week if they kept quiet. However, the couple refused and reported the murder to the police. Word must have reached Burke and Hare, as by the time the police had arrived, Marjorie's body was gone and had been taken to Knox. Burke, Helen, Hare and Margaret were arrested. All of them gave different statements and Burke and Hare blamed each other. The police investigation soon led to Professor Knox, and James Gray was able to identify Marjorie's body. Having read the story in her local paper, Janet Brown came forward to the police and identified clothes found at Hare's lodging that belonged to Mary Patterson. However, the police had little hard evidence that the crimes had been committed, and eventually Sir William Ray offered Hare immunity in return for testifying against Burke and Helen, which he did. The trial began on Christmas Eve 1828, and early the following day, Burke and Helen were both charged with Marjorie's murder. Burke was also charged with the murder of Mary Patterson and James Wilson. Meanwhile, due to the lack of evidence, they could not prove Helen's guilt and she was released. William Burke was sentenced to death by hanging and was hanged at Lawnmarket in front of a crowd of 25,000 people on January the 28th, 1829. His body was then donated to science. A number of students at the medical school at Edinburgh University took souvenirs of his skin and even used it to bind books and make card holders. Burke's skeleton is still on display at Surgeons Hall in Edinburgh next to his death mask and the life mask of Hare's face. Despite having obvious involvement in the murder, he was released in February 1829 and ran away to England. No one actually knows what happened to Hare, but some say that it is rumoured that he was thrown into a limestone quarry by an angry mob and lived out the rest of his days as a blind beggar in London. Helen and Margaret also ran away. Helen is said to have ran away to Australia and Margaret to Ireland. Despite the mass public outrage, Knox was cleared of all charges. With his reputation now in ruins, Knox moved to London to try and salvage a career in medicine. After the Burke and Hare murder in 1831, a similar case of murder occurred in London by the Burkers in Bethnal Green, which led to the Anatomy Act of 1832, which allowed doctors, anatomy lecturers and medical students better access to bodies and allowed the legal donation of bodies to medical science, effectively calling an end to the illegal body snatcher trade. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow me on social media. I've got a Twitter in the description down below, so please follow me on Twitter. Also, please like this video if you enjoyed it and comment down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel as I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you guys enjoy your day, and I hope to see you again soon in the future.